Finally, someone who doesn't talk a lot. What's up, Tony Johnson?
Mike, how you doing? It's good to see you as always.
I'm horrible. Okay, it's good to see you too, man. We haven't had you on in a while, and frankly, I'd say golf has gotten more popular since you last saw us.
Oh, I'd say so. Yes. I mean, maybe
Oh,
not for the best reasons per se, depending on what line you stand on. But certainly, it has been one of the main sports in the news for months on end, which I don't think we can ever have said in our lifetimes, at least, for sure.
unless it was part of Tiger Woods, but even that had its
Even
time
so,
in
I
and
don't.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's been like this many weeks in a row. It seems like it was unending. Top flight stuff. But yeah, glad to get to another major at least, and hopefully a lot of the other stuff is kind of rested for a bit because this is one of the big events of the year.
Let's get into the U.S. Open first before we unlock the other stuff, because Phil Mickelson is playing in this, which we'll get to, of course, later with that. But I know you obviously have some bets. You also have a new thing you're writing for medium.com. So that's Tony Johnson 29. So let's talk about that first, and then we're going to get into all the stuff you're looking at this weekend.
Yeah, so I decided to finally get going on the writing train yet again. It's one of the things that I really love to do, and I do a lot of journaling and stuff at home and things along those lines. But just sharing some stuff and at least my thoughts and feelings on just on sports in general. And we're going to have a long time. We did this a little bit with the old Vegas Squares
Ooh.
site, where I'm going to run some bets on a weekly basis, almost near daily when we get to the football season, so I can follow along with everything that I'm betting. I'm going to give people a chance to at least put everything out there before the event starts, of course, so they can if they want to bet along or just follow along, and we'll go and do the record, and it's going to be stuff that I'm actually playing myself, and I take it really seriously. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. I've talked to some other creators on the site about things that we can do, so I think it'll be a good time, a nice little side project, just what I need.
Tony's making moves. Love to hear it. And you're a professional sports bettor, so obviously there's credibility to yours. It's not just some guy writing on a website. It's Tony Johnson 29 on medium.com. It's got to help.
Absolutely, and have some fun with it. There's this theory that sports betting is kind of in far reaches. The people that actually make money, nobody wants to talk about anything, nobody wants to do anything, and it's all hush hush statistical analysis. And I wanted to kind of bring it to the forefront that that's just not the
Ooh.
case. It can be fun, it can be an interesting thing. It doesn't always have to be statistical analytics type of boring stuff. Because again, that's yet it is some of the things that I enjoy. It's still not everything, and still watching the game and understanding what's going on. I think can go a really really long way. Just to have some fun with it, because it should be something that if you want to do well at, you should enjoy it. There's very few people, I think, at least in the sports betting realm, that they really don't enjoy sports if they make a living at it or if they make money at it. You really have to have that love and desire and passion.
And people don't understand as well is that sports betting, a lot of times it's against the grain of what the masses think. Like
For sure.
me and Aaron are talking about the hockey thing and like how we think the Lightning are just going to win it easily. And sports bettors said, no, not so fast, pal. So it goes against the hype, and sometimes the hype is a little bit far fetched.
Absolutely. I mean, you can make a good comparison to maybe the stock market. One of those things that the old buy low, sell high type of thing, the yin yang zigzag. We see it in the NBA all the time. With teams that that win loss, back and forth these series go. Sometimes it can really behoove you to sort of be on the other side of the coin and be a very contrarian player. Good example here is the Steph Curry numbers. Have gotten so high for his player
Ooh.
propositions as the games have gone on, and so there was a really really good spot starting, I think, in the last game, and there will be going forward where even as the points per game, like he was in 31-32 at a lot of sites last week, and that's tough. You got to make a lot of threes to get over, in the 30-point realm, and he just wasn't able to do it. He's going to have off nights and things like that are going to happen, but that real number is probably 27, 28. What his points number should be when it gets to the low 30s. That's where the spots are, and it feels so uncomfortable. He's been so hot, but that's the stuff you got to look for, I think.
One of the player props I had was like Steph Curry 31 or 30 and a half points, like you said. I said under.
Yep.
I thought it was like 29. I was going to sweat it. I was like, oh, I'm good.
It's exactly the bet. That's exactly the type of thing, and that number's not going to change. He's still going to be around 30 or 31 probably on the next game on Thursday. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, just another evaluate the game and go forward, and it's a lot of fun. So for sure.
One more thing before golf. I think Draymond Green was like a 21.5 points, rebounds, assists. He had
Yes.
22 and he fouled out. So I was whew, I went over, thank
Yes.
God.
There you go.
That is
Good.
rough.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, he's had a rough series, but at least a turnaround for you in that game for sure. And I think we've seen the worst of Draymond Green.
Agreed.
Before he will certainly, I think, heat it up as no matter how long the rest of the series goes. It looks like he's back into fine form.
Hear that, listeners? We got golf, hockey, basketball, everything, football, everything's here. So let's get to U.S. Open. Give me some of your thoughts for this weekend. I know it's a huge event, and obviously PGA does not run it. But how are we feeling about the U.S. Open this weekend?
Yeah, so I mean, a USGA event, you know that when they take over a course, they're going to make it as difficult as possible. Depending on the weather conditions and how things go, it's really always an interesting thing. Now, the difference this year, I think, than we've seen in maybe in a few previous years, is this course they're playing at the Country Club, Brookline, up near Boston, Massachusetts,
Oh, wow.
is not nearly as long and not nearly as demanding as some of the other courses we've seen. So it's still only a par 70, but just 7,260 yards. It's about 200 to 300 yards less than on average than we've seen the last 3 years at the U.S. Open. So
Wow.
I do think that will create a bit of a schism here. We've seen pretty much it become a bomber's paradise in these last 2 or 3 U.S. Opens, at least. In fact, you can actually go back 10, 20 years. The U.S. Open has really become a bomb and gouge type of event, and I think this week it's going to be really, really different in the sense that a lot more players are in the mix. Greens are extremely small here as well. Averaging only 4,300 square feet, which would be the second smallest green complexes on the PGA Tour this year.
Wow.
So yeah, it becomes, in my opinion, more of a target golf type of thing. Got to try to hit fairways, have to try to at least hit the green. Anywhere on the green is going to be good. Again, when you get these really small green complexes, it becomes less of a hitting at a pin versus just hitting it on the green and giving yourself a best chance to make a putt. So I've taken a bit of a different stance than I usually do in this tournament, and again, we'll see how it progresses. But that's kind of the main spot where I'm at. We're also going to see a lot of wind, which is a little bit
Wow.
a little bit uncommon for this area of the country, actually. But Thursday through Saturday, I think they're going to get gusts into the low 20-mile-an-hour range, at least in the afternoon, all 3 days. So
And golf balls this big.
scoring is going to be tough for sure. So hopefully they're ready with a lot of golf balls, because even in hitting in some of this big fescue rough, which is very common in the Northeast, it can be tough to find balls. There's spotters and everything out there, but it will not be easy. So I'm really, really looking forward to this week.
That's awesome. So before you go on your bets, you got Bryson DeChambeau is a power golfer. We want guys that are more fine with their game, that are refined, right?
Yeah, so I think what you saw Bryson do at Winged Foot, where he just basically took over the course and dominated. And actually, in the top 10 that week, you saw 7 or 8 guys that were in the top 25 in driving distance that did really well in that U.S. Open. So that's kind of the example of where we're going to see a very, very different approach here. I'm not quite sure it's a Kevin Kisner money type of thing, where the really short hitters can win, but guys like that we've seen recently that would be known, like Corey Connors, again, not the longest hitter in the world, but an incredibly good ball striker, a really good quality guy around the greens. Really where he lacks or where he struggles the most is putting. And again, this is one of those times where just getting the ball on the green and very unfamiliar greens with all of these players that nobody's played a major here in the last 30 years. I do think that putting is not going to be nearly as important and this week than it normally would be then. So yeah, guys like him, even Jordan Spieth, as we know, not a very long hitter, but the short game. Anytime you miss a green in an event like this, guys like Spieth that are just masters and wizards around the green, and how well he's been playing so far this season. His ball striking very improved. He's top 10 in all round tee to green. I just that type of player, I think, more so than, as you said, the Bryson DJ type of players, which I don't think it's just not going to be as good of a fit for them this week.
What about Rory? I mean, I know Rory's been kind of hot and he's been having some, like Aaron says, the hot later rounds, but he just won. And it's got 2 wins
Yes.
this year.
That's the toughest part, right? One of those things that I have a friend, who does a lot of betting as well, and he thankfully already made his bet a couple of weeks ago. But like, how can you back Rory now? He just finished with the 62,
Right.
a back-to-back winner in Canada, and now you got to back him as a favorite here around 10-1. It's just, with the field as stacked as it is. That's the problem, Mike, is it's really, really hard to back guys. And again, nobody's going to be negative, with Rory. Obviously, the fit's fine. It makes a lot of sense. He's playing great. He's in form. But again, trying to just find guys with numbers that are reasonable that we can get something at, it's tough. It's not a guy I'm going to necessarily fade because, again, I don't want to, jump in front of trains here, players that are playing this well.
Right.
But yeah, he's a tough guy to back here. In fact, I have 6 guys I've written down that I think are overvalued. And McIlroy is
Let's
one of
do
those
it.
guys. He's one of those 6. It's interesting you bring that up. There's another one who's finished really well the last 2 or 3 weeks is Tony Finau. Finally
Okay.
gotten his putting around, and he's got three top 10s in his last 4 events. But where his numbers are and where it lies, and his record at the U.S. Open is quite abysmal. Again, I just think he's just overvalued here. Justin Rose just had a really, really good finish as his numbers have plummeted down. And as a guy, he can't really win on difficult tracks anymore. He's just not that kind of player anymore. Billy Horschel just won a couple of weeks ago at the Memorial, finally broke through
Right.
again for the first time in 4 or 5 years. He's been playing extremely well this year, finally gets the win. I think we're going to see some pullback from Billy. Maybe not intentionally, but for somebody like
Right.
Billy Horschel to be 40 or 45-1 in a field that this strong, these aren't good numbers. The real number for Billy is probably 70 to 80-1, and you can only get 40, 45. Yeah, it's that type. Sometimes it's best just to avoid certain guys. Like I've talked about this with Aaron and with you guys before. Is knowing what not to bet versus knowing what to bet can be just as beneficial. Staying off of something just as beneficial. So that's the stance that I'm taking.
You got to be responsible. And I think what you mentioned, although it is shorter, it's going to be difficult because of the wind. It's going to be difficult because the greens are so narrow. So you're going to have guys that are really just on point. And like you said, Rory, that's a good point about Rory being, because now he's kind of like a front runner. Can he handle the pressure? He, at one point, was going to be the best golfer since Tiger Woods, and then fell flat on his face.
Yeah,
Tony Finau led most of the Canadian Open.
He did. That's right.
So
it's exactly it. And he's a guy that can't close. We've seen Finau over the years, only having 2 wins to his credit is, for the talent that he has and the amount of times that as you just talked about, he's gotten in contention and hasn't gotten the job done. If you're making, win future bets, you have to, it makes to note that you need people that can finish, and Finau has not finished. Now, finding a guy that's 200, 300, 400-1, yeah, you're not going to be able to find a lot of finishers in that realm, but that's why you're getting 2, 3, 400. But if you're going to bet on Tony Finau at 30, you got to have some finishing capability, and I just don't see it from there. And yeah, as you said, with Rory, he's been a front runner for now years and years, since he was a teenager, essentially. He's got 21 wins on the PGA Tour and, multiple majors. He's obviously had an incredibly successful career. As you said, Mike, has he been the end-all, be-all, greatest player of this generation? Has he separated himself from everybody else? I don't think so.
Well, he's supposed to, yeah.
I agree. Yeah. So I totally agree with you. Totally agree.
You also made a great point about, I want to get your U.S. Open bets, like your best ones as well, but you made a good point about like the betting like 35 or 40. On the surface, yeah, that sounds pretty good, but when you, like you said, if you're looking at he should be 80, you're kind of like, that's kind of, the 40 is kind of bait there.
Correct.
You don't want to take the bait.
No. I mean, yeah, it sounds nice to get anything from 30 to 40-1, but if the true odds, if the real number, should be a lot higher, and there's a lot of ways we can get to that number, and that's for a totally other show. But yeah, I mean, you just can't do it as much as you want to. I want to bet Justin Thomas this week, but I can't fire it at 13 or 14-1. It's not, again, that number just isn't good enough for him in this quality field. I want to, yes, of course I do, but it's just one of those things you kind of have to pass up. So yeah, I'll start with some of the win bets here and some of the things that I have. Absolutely. So I'm actually kind of I don't have anyone in the top realm, in the top 15, 20 players. I don't really have any of those guys per se. So I'll start out with Shane Lowry. I do have him at 35. I just think this is literally the perfect fit for him. That's actually the last great major winner that I had. I had him at the Open Championship 3 years ago at 100 to 1, and again, the fit seemed so perfect there, and the way his game was in form coming into that tournament, I think is not even as pronounced as it is now.
Ooh,
6 top 10s this year on the PGA Tour. He's done extremely well on difficult, short courses where you really have to navigate your way around, and this is the epitome of that. This week, he doesn't have to hit driver on nearly all of these holes. It becomes very target golf. A lot of wind. Growing up in Ireland, he is used to playing in conditions like this. I just think it's
yeah,
perfect. It's just a perfect fit here. So I'm trying to find spots with Shane Lowry as much as we can. Now, there may not be a matchup bet or whatever, but I know I'm going to want him to win, and I know I'm going to want him to try to find something in the top 20, maybe a top 10 type of bet. So that's the kind of player we're looking at this week. Going down the list, I have Sunjay Im at 45 to 1. Again,
okay,
he's been off the radar a little bit. He was hurt earlier in the season. He did miss the PGA Championship due to COVID 3 or 4 weeks ago. But besides that, he has played extremely well this year, and all of his wins on the PGA Tour have been on these short to middling difficult tracks. He's a great tough course player.
love it.
I just don't think he gets nearly enough credit. Again, being a native South Korean, not necessarily having the best handle on the language, he is not a very popular pick usually
Right.
off the board. So I think finding a spot for him is really, really good there. I do have Corey Connors. I mentioned him earlier. I mean, how could I not go back to that? We have him at 62 to 1 out here. Is as good a number as you're going to get anywhere in the world. Those are the three guys I have that are known, that I think have, give yourself the greatest chance. But there are some really good numbers down the line that are good. So I'm going to fire off just three, just so you know, so we can hopefully come back and talk about maybe a winner from this realm. Abraham answered 115 to 1.
Whew.
Yeah, Sebastian Munoz at 170. And then we'll finish off at Brian Harmon at 200 to 1. Again, these are all, well, Munoz is not the shortest hitter, but these are all shorter hitters and guys that do extremely well on difficult courses and have a knack for being able to get the ball up and down in these difficult green complexes. I think all three of those numbers are really, really strong, and really excited about, again, once you find the guys, it takes me a day and a half to be able to do that, and then trying to figure out what we can do with that, and go from there. It's a good time.
Shane Lowry's like he was the one with the 6 top 10s, right?
Yes.
See that with all the parity in golf, it seems like a spot where you almost like I don't want to say guaranteeing a win, but it's almost like he's gonna break through eventually, and this might be it.
This might be it, and I want to try to be on him at a reasonable number if we can.
Right.
So the best top 10 number I can find for him is plus 270 right now, so a little
Woo!
more than 2.5 to 1. So we'll see. I want to get a little bit better than that. My goal was to get to something at 320, 330. We'll see. It's not we have about another day from the time that we're recording now until the tournament starts. So we'll see if the number moves or anything like that. So that's the type of thing. Yeah, we want to try to bet Lowry at top 10, and his top 20 numbers about even money. You can get plus 115
That's
at
still
a
good.
large book out here. Exactly. So how many guys can actually win this tournament? How many guys can actually finish in the top 20? You can actually throw out of the field of 156, you can throw out about 30 or 40 names. There's some amateurs, there's some, players that qualified, local qualifying, and then there's some golfers, that just don't have it. Guys like Jim Furyk, because he won a US Open back in 2003 and he's grandfathered in this thing. He just doesn't really have the capability to finish in the top 20. So, that top 20 number really isn't reticent of the entire field. It's really only reticent about 120 players maybe or so. So just trying to find guys and spots like that is the whole goal.
I have a question for you about the age of this whole thing. Like this, I don't know why it's popped in my head, but the golfers you mentioned, are they all under 30, or are there some older ones that you mentioned?
Yeah, so actually, most of them are in the older-ish range. Brian Harmon is well into his
Ooh,
mid-30s now. Munoz is like 29, I think. Answer and Sanjay M are still relatively young. Sanjay I think he looks older than he is. Sanjay, I think, is only 23 or 24. But Shane
He's been
Lowry
playing
is
for
in,
a
is
while,
in
it
his
seems
30s.
like.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, Mike, because he plays nearly every week. He's one of those guys. He's an Iron Man
Yes.
type of guy, and we just keep seeing his name on leaderboards, and it feels like he's been around for a lot longer than he has. But I think he's only 24,
He
25. But
might
yeah,
break
Shane
through.
Lowry's into his 30s. You know, he finally broke through. I think at the age of 29 himself
Oh,
in the
wow.
British Open. That was what 3 years ago now, before the pandemic. So yeah, he's in his early 30s. You know, it's
On the
as long
prime
as
there.
exactly. You know, when people get to their prime and get to their their best golf, at different times in their life, we'll see if Scotty Scheffler, if this ends up being his prime, which is his early to mid 20s now, will he become, a great long-term player? We don't know. Maybe he'll peak now. But as you said,
Right.
Mike, most of the time guys are peaking in their late 20s to early 30s, becoming a veteran player, seeing a lot of golf courses, understanding how to win, knowing, when to put your foot down on the gas, when not to. There's a learning curve. There's no doubt about that. And yeah, I like to have guys in that realm if we can. Nothing wrong with having Will Zalatoris and young guns that can fire and dominate golf courses. Nothing wrong at all. But in tournaments like this, in grindy, difficult conditions in the U.S.
Windy.
Open, yes, you tend to want to have a little bit of a veteran presence there for guys that have gotten it done in the past.
What's interesting is I recognize, I believe, 9 of the 10 names that you said today.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like, I'm just a leaderboard watcher. That's huge for me. And seeing Joe Nam, the reason I like that as like a good outlier, although he's only 24, he's been. It's like he might as well be 30 because he's been playing for so
Playing
long
so
every
long.
single week.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
it's nice to have him because he knows what to expect more so another 24-year-old wouldn't know what to expect.
Agreed.
Fair
Totally
enough.
agree. Yep.
So there is one more thing we have to get to, the elefante in the roomie here. Oh. Phil Mickelson's playing this weekend, and it's funny how Phil Mickelson went from some anti-Saudi Arabian guy, political side of that, to all of a sudden one of the top paid golfers in a Saudi-backed league. Now, like Aaron has said before on the show, and I agree with, PGA is backed by China, so like don't play this crap. Like don't pick one side while there's a camel on the other side of it. Come on now. What is your take on them throwing all this millions of dollars at people, and guys like Dustin Johnson, DeChambeau are going? I'm with Tiger Woods on this.
Yeah, I mean, again, staying away from the true politics aside, because I think that's a conversation we don't necessarily want to get into. But why are they doing it? Well, I do think it's a money grab more so than anything
Agreed.
else. At the end of the day, honestly, I believe if people were to be, Jason Kokrak, I think was one of the few guys that actually said it, where he, doesn't want to play for very much longer. He wants to spend time with, with his family and basically do nothing. So he just wants to play in the LIV Tour for a couple of years and make a ton of money. And he basically said that. And, again, and that's his take and that's his prerogative, and that's fine.
Right.
But I do think a lot of guys are skirting the edge, talking about it being good for golf and, a lot of BS and things like that. And it's just, Mike, honestly, I truly believe, Phil, it's been documented now by, writers like Alan Shipnuck and others that he has some financial difficulties. There's no question about that. To get paid a large sum of money for showing up and playing, no matter how good or bad that you are, I think is a big draw. And again, whether you want to talk about it or not, whether they want to talk about it or not, I believe honestly, Mike, that that's the driver. That it could be the most oppressive, worst regime in the in the universe, which the Saudis may or may not be, but it
Right.
doesn't matter to these guys. It doesn't matter, and that's it. Why is Taylor Gooch going to play in this tournament? He is in his mid-20s, an up-and-coming, very good player. He's a top 30 player in the world, and he could become one of the greats. Taylor is really, really talented and really good, and he has potentially foregone his membership to the PGA Tour.
Right.
And why would everyone's, he's one of the main guys that a lot of the insiders have questioned, Taylor Gooch, why? He's up and he's only won, once too. So like he hasn't even won a major. Like, why would he do that? Well, there's a big guaranteed payday there. I believe that's what it is, Mike. I think it's at the end of the day, pretty simple for a lot of these guys. I really do.
To me, that takes away from the entertainment value. And I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
why. People like to say, well, you're like, I'll get off my lawn guy. I'm going to tell you why. In the NBA and the NFL, they still have to compete. To me, in golf, Phil Mickelson took a bunch of money. You know, last time I checked the scoreboard of that whole first LIV tournament thing, the guy who won it was like a -9, and Phil was like -1. Like he was -1. How are you in a tournament of 48 people and you're 7 strokes back if you're that guy?
Exactly.
You just don't want anymore. Like you said, you're showing up for nothing.
That's it. That's it's showing up, get his 200 million or whatever the case will be.
Right.
You know, he's obviously going to get paid, you know, whatever they get paid for finishing 20th or 30th or whatever the case is, and he'll make his money. You know, he's 51 years old. You know,
Hasn't
Mike,
won crap since crap. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, won the PGA, you know, last year, but like it's
that was an anomaly.
It was, and he's reaping the dividends of this. I don't think he would have gotten a 200 million guaranteed from LIV if he didn't win the PGA Championship. So certainly, I think that's the payoff and that's the decision. And you know, again, I know we just talked about some of the stuff in regards to sports betting and gambling, but you made a mention of it a little bit. If there's no control and if you have issues, and it's well documented that Phil has extreme gambling issues. Money doesn't grow on trees, you know, and you can have you know, he's made what, upteen millions of dollars in his career, but if it gets spent or if it gets lost, you know, he has what, 3-4 kids and a wife, and I'm sure a lot of expenses. They add up, and this is the easy way out, and it's sad, as you said, and it's depressing, and it's unfortunate for the fans and for people like us that love sports. And we have this great
thought the golf was on an upward trajectory,
right? And now you have this
go south now.
Potential great schism, you know, with another tour that's backed with billions of dollars, and it can be like Amazon. They can lose money for years and years and years, and if that's what they want to do, and if they don't care, then that's what is going to happen, because there's going to be more people like Phil and DJ and Gooch and Kevin Na and all these guys. There's going to be more people that keep defecting. The longer this goes on, and maybe it'll go on for a while. You know, nobody made money at Amazon, you know, for 12 years, you know, in that company.
They were a book company.
Yeah. I mean, that they intentionally lost money for years. Yeah. And a lot of these big time tech companies. That's it. So
if that, you have to go soon, or how are we feeling?
I'm feeling good. Whatever. However you want to do it.
We're not up against it like we used to be, because you got my mind going crazy right now. So, like, with the Saudi golf thing, it's almost like it takes away, because if you're just taking Bryson DeChambeau's and Dustin Johnson's, who, if we're fair at this point, if they're only in it for the money, I guess we don't need them anyways. But those are such big names.
Right.
It's almost like, what are we do? PGA is going to suffer so much from this.
Yeah. Yeah, the PGA will suffer. The fans will suffer. You know, the sponsors will suffer. It's going to be difficult. You know, how you have you've had pillars of business for decades that are sponsors. Right. And, you know, will they stay? And, you know, how will that affect the tour? That's going to affect prize pools. That's going to affect the fan experience. It's going to affect a lot of things. And, you know, Mike, it's one of those things that I wish we had a simple answer, you know, what you just asked, essentially, because we don't, you know, we just don't know how it's going to shake out. Yeah, guys like Bryson DeChambeau, they're not the greatest players, you know, on tour, but they move the needle. They matter. You know, there's a lot of discussion and talk and things that can go on. You know, what if other players, as you said, you know, there's still plenty of other great young and up and coming players, and even established players. You know, what if a guy like Colin Morikawa ends up, you know, going to play? You know, these are big losses. These are current, you know, major winners that also just move the needle, and not just for the entertainment aspect. You know, Bryson moves it a little bit more for entertainment style. You know, you're going to start having guys move the needle for pure golf. You know, it's a slippery slope. You know, Dustin Johnson is the biggest name. And it is the name that I think has altered this more so than anybody else. But there are guys that are bigger than Dustin Johnson that can do more. And if that happens, you know, we'll see. We'll see. So it's unfortunate.
Another point for me is that people like to say, well, the PGA needs to spend more money. I'm going to tell you why I don't like that. PGA's been fine for years. And if you look at what guys used to make, it is less than what they make now. So the PGA has grown. What makes me mad about this is the more guys like Dustin Johnson that want to just say screw it because they're not getting money, you're really ruining for everybody else. Because
Yeah.
now you're not there to sell tickets. And so now the prize pools do become less because you wanted money. The answer should not be PGA, pay us more. The answer should be don't go to this crappy money, just throw money at the wall and hope it sticks kind of league.
Yeah. I mean, do you
That's
care
the answer to
about
me.
Yeah, do you care about prestige and and winning large events and the contested tournaments for 60, 70 years? They just played the Charles Schwab at Colonial. That course has been around for almost 100 years.
And
It
that
is an
matters in golf.
institution. Yeah, and that matters and stuff like that matters. You're never going to see a live event at Colonial Country Club. There's not going to play at places like this, and that's also a real shame. Winning at the Centurion Club in London, is not the same thing as winning at Colonial, as winning at Riviera, as winning at these places that are just renowned institutions. And for some players, we've heard it from John Rahm, we've heard it from Rory McIlroy, we've heard it from the aforementioned Morikawa. That matters to them. They care about that. They care about golf as an entity and as a
And
sport.
nostalgia,
And
yeah.
yes, and that matters. And there are things that are more important than money. For some people, that's not the case. And that's, as you said, the great schism with where we're at, Mike, because as long as you have a backed tour that has nearly unlimited funds and probably
It's
doesn't
not going
seem
to
to
go away anytime soon because of
right.
that,
And if
too.
they don't care about making a profit, which it doesn't appear so,
Yes, yeah.
then where do we have it? That's
Right.
there is no recourse at all, to that, and you are going to have players that defect, and it's unfortunate. And as you said, you're going to have now not instead of having one great tour, you're going to have this great schism here. And what happens with the Corn Ferry Tour? What happens with some of these other great tours? The Corn Ferry Tour is probably the second best golf tour in the entire world. And now, if you start losing sponsors, you start losing, prize pools or whatever the case will be on the PGA Tour. What's going to happen to even the Corn Ferry Tour? That they're going to struggle to stay afloat, and that tour has produced so many great winners, major winners that have come through on the Corn Ferry Tour on their rise up in rankings and their rise up in the golf world.
Right.
And the fact that we're going to lose potentially that is also a scary thing. It's one of the things that's not talked about very much. But I love the Corn Ferry Tour, and I love watching the younger players, as they are on their rise, or veterans that have done well and now are trying to build their game back up, and to see guys come back and win. Guys like Ryan Brem from earlier this year, had been toiling on the Corn Ferry Tour for 4 or 5 years, gets a couple of starts, is on his last start here on the PGA Tour and wins in the Caribbean, and now his life is forever changed. And we're just not going to see stories from the LIV Golf Tour. These are there was no excitement. There was nothing there in this tournament last week, and
Right.
yet you have great stories of Ryan Brem and all of these first-time winners and guys that can extend their life and their career, and we get to follow along. We get to see Ryan from age of 22 after he graduates college. And if you watch
Or
college
Jordan
golf, which I
Spieth.
really enjoy, or Jordan Spieth, great example.
That was a great.
watch
The
him.
reason why I know him is because right after
Yeah.
college he won the
Yes.
Masters, and now
Yes.
it's like we all know who Jordan Spieth is now.
Right. Exactly it. Exactly it. We don't get those stories if this goes the other direction. You don't get that stuff. You don't get that feeling. We feel like we know Jordan so well, and it's a shame because you feel like you get to know guys.
I know he's from Texas and he's a good old boy. That's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, but you hear him talk to Michael Greller, the caddy. The mics are over there to pick things up. We know how weird he can get over certain shots. We understand, like, we've gotten to know him for 4 or 5 years, and we love him for it. It's
That
gotten
means
in the
something
way
to fans.
before, right?
Yes.
And that's what makes this whole thing really, really good. Is you get to know these players and you get to follow along in their journey, and it becomes a part of you. And that's what makes sports so great, is that it becomes your journey too. And you're not gonna get that journey. We're not going to see that, on the LIV Tour. And it'll take away not only from, I think, golf itself, but it becomes a knock on sports. It becomes, it's all about money, and if that's really what it is,
Then
we've
I
seen that
wanna
with
see
other
you play.
sports. Right.
Yeah.
And we've seen this happen with other sports where, other tours come up and other things happen. We saw it with IndyCar back in the 80s when they split. We've seen it with Formula 1 in Europe. We've seen it with boxing. They have what, 5 sanctioning bodies now? There was one for 70 years in boxing. There's
And how's
5
boxing done the
now.
last 30, 40
Right.
years?
That was the biggest sport in the United States for decades. And now the last 30, 40 years, it's an afterthought. It's a
And,
footnote.
right. And you have an undefeated guy, people don't even care.
They don't even care because nobody fight. They don't fight the best guys. They're not. It's just it's a horrible situation. We saw it with IndyCar again. I was barely alive for the start of this, or whatever. But that was by far the biggest racing group in the United States. There
The reason
wasn't
why Indy
NASCAR. NASCAR
500
was
is
not
a
there.
thing.
Yeah,
The reason
and
why
then
Indy
they
500 is a thing is back then.
Mhm.
Michael Andretti's of the world.
Exactly. And then they split and they have a big schism. They lose sponsors, and all of a sudden NASCAR takes off and that becomes a thing. But that wasn't the case for 20, 30 years. And people don't realize that is when you get these things and these issues at the heart of the sport, it hurts. It hurts the sports themselves. It doesn't just hurt the players or what have you. It hurts the sports themselves. And we've seen it time and time again. And that's the scary thing about this is we don't know how it's going to finish, but it's
Starting
not
ugly.
off to a good start. Yep.
Right. One last thing I'll say is I want to give credit to Tiger Woods. I said this last week or Monday on the show, whatever. He was one of the guys like Rory. I don't know if you saw the quotes, but he was like, it means something. They offered him apparently like some high 9-figure salary, according to like Greg Norman, like the cream of the crop,
Yep.
and more than Tiger's ever made. And Tiger said, "Who cares?"
Yep.
I love that Tiger and Rory, who are still technically bigger names than Dustin Johnson, I love the fact that they went out and said, "Screw these guys." I love it.
I agree. And how many of those guys are left, Mike? That's the question. I was just talking about that with a friend. How many of those guys are there? How many Tigers, McIlroy, Justin Thomas, John Rahm? These are guys that we're really confident that are never going to defect. They've said this numerous times over and over again. This is not what they're about. How many are there, Mike? We don't know. And that's the thing is that I don't know how many there are. I don't know if Victor Hovland is a potential guy. I don't know if Colin Morikawa. There's a lot of guys we just don't know. And it'll be interesting to see because you see people's true colors and their true, feelings and
what
beliefs.
they want to, or do you want to win, or do you want to, or are you just here because you made it and now you're good? I don't like it.
It's fat. I know, and it's unfortunately something we're going to deal with for potentially years down the line. We don't know. We don't even know who all the great players will be in 3 to 4 years. There's guys in college right now, I'm sure that'll be some of the great players in 3 or 4 years. And where will that all shake out? We just don't know.
Sport is the best of the best. If you're going to throw a bunch of money, hope it sticks it on a wall, it's not sports anymore. It's just money.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agreed.
I'm going to end the show here, and I'm going to talk to Tony afterwards. But we've had a great show. We went an hour and 15 minutes today. I'm excited. We've been doing these little 40-minute shows. So thank you, Tony, for helping me and keeping me going here. That was awesome. Thanks to Aaron and Sammy earlier. And we'll see you guys tomorrow. Whoever's on the show, I know I'll be. Thanks, guys, and thank you, Tony.
Thanks, guys.